Welcome to another installment of Solforge Tips with Tiny Grimes. This week I'm going to discuss a deck I've been experimenting with called the Traffic Jam. It is an Uterra deck with a splash of Necrium. The goal is to fill every lane with creatures and present a myriad of threats that are difficult to handle. Here's a little history of it. It evolved from a typical growth deck featuring the Uterra Packmaster, the Spring Dryad, and Ferocious Roar. The goal is simple, to present multiple large threats that must be dealt with quickly. In order to grow the Dryad, cards were added that provide multiple creatures at a time, such as the Echo Wisp, which allows you to put out 2 creatures on levels 1 and 2, and on level 3, flooding the board with Echo Wisps. And I also included the Ether Hounds, which are essentially the poor man's version of the Echo Wisp, but provide another alternative to adding more creatures to the board quickly. The deck evolved as I experimented more, and I decided to try using Phyto Bomb. And Phyto Bomb allows you to splash out the entire board with creatures. Of course, there's a downside in that you give your opponent's creature. As I was experimenting with the deck, I noticed that whenever I dropped the Phyto Bomb, I wanted to do more than just give us both creatures and grow my Dryad. So I quickly realized that cards such as Ferocious Roar and the Lifeblood Dryad would be useful in providing myself with larger creatures than those of my opponents. Then I added the Deep Branch Ancient to the deck. Because of all the lanes are clogged, he comes in already as an 8/8, a 16/16, and a 24/24. Essentially, you get a massive threat at every level just for playing the deck how it was intended to be played. And in fact, getting a 16/16 at level 2 is very difficult to deal with. The deck has a number of removal options. The most important one for the deck is bot Animate. And to be honest, I would have 2 to 3 copies in the deck if I owned them. However, I do not. And therefore, suitable replacements are Dreadbolt and Cull of the Weak. With Dreadbolt and Cull of the Weak targeting a different subset of creatures such as Shapers or Gaunts. Gemhide Basher is also included, not because he's a useful creature, but because he is essentially removal in creature form. By playing him in the lane of a Shaper or a Gaunt, he's able to take out these creatures immediately instead of having to wait one turn where the Shaper can do damage or the Gaunt can start to grow out of reach and in fact just move out of the way of any blockers you put in his way. Now the deck also includes a very useful finishing card. In addition to having Dryads and Packmasters that present threats that must be dealt, this deck has another win condition built into it. With Explosive Demise, if your opponent does something tricky like use an Energy Prison on your 24/24 Dryad, you aren't stuck with a useless creature. You can play Explosive Demise, and poof, you've done 24 damage with a creature that was doing nothing. And if you look carefully, it destroys a level 2 creature even at level 1. So you don't need to level this card, and you can play it as a surprise on that level 2 Dryad that you've grown to this ridiculous level that's suddenly been neutralized. You can also use this card as a form of double attack. You attack once with your high attack creature, then you play Explosive Demise, blow it up, essentially doing double the damage. And finally, you can use this card if a creature is about to die. So for example, you trade your Dryad for another big creature. Your 27/27 Dryad has been knocked down to a 27/2 Dryad. It is surely going to be traded for a very low level creature. You just play Explosive Demise and suddenly you're getting more value for that large creature. Alright, so playing the deck is fairly straightforward. Basically, at the low levels, you want to be leveling your Packmaster and your Dryad as they present your constant threats. Also, from the beginning, you want to try to clog that board. Phyto Bomb is an excellent example of a card that can just immediately fill every lane. Oftentimes, this deck will take a large enough lead during rank 2 that your opponent will not be able to recover, and you may even win in rank 2, and the deck still provides a lot of punch in ranks 3 and 4. So I know with the release of set 1, it's unlikely that you actually own every one of the cards I've listed here. So here are a number of low rarity substitutes for the deck. So first of all, if you want to play this specific build and you want to play the Traffic Jam, Phyto Bomb is a pretty critical card. You don't need to have all 3, but I would recommend having 2, probably 2 Roars, and at least 2 Spring Dryads, preferably 3. Most of the other cards can be replaced. Moreover, even if you don't have cards like Phyto Bomb, the deck can be built as a more typical growth style Uterra deck. So let's take a look at some of the alternate methods for building this deck. First of all, the Spring Dryad is only a rare, so hopefully you'll have 2 copies, hopefully you'll have 3. Now if you don't have any Echo Wisps or Pact Masters, that's unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. There are a number of other cards that you can substitute in. First of all, you can add in a Hunting Pack. And in many ways, a Hunting Pack can be even better than an Echo Wisp. You can get potentially 4 lanes full just from this one card, if you get exceedingly lucky. Another useful card is the Grove Huntress. She provides a lane filler and a pump going up all the way to +5/+5 at later levels, making not only a Dryad a threat, but making essentially any creature on the board into a threat. Another useful card is the Lifeshaper Savant. From level 2 and on, you get to provide a rather sizable bump to any of your creatures in play, and she has pretty good stats at 610 at level 2, so she's not dying instantly. Another card I recommend is the Fellwalker, and I don't see a lot of people playing this in this style deck. What I really like about the Fellwalker is that it comes into play, it boosts your Dryad, and it allows you to block a big attack creature 2 times. And when it dies the first time, it comes back into play, and guess what? Your Dryad pumps again. Another card that's useful for pumping the Dryad is the Grove Matriarch. Whenever this creature dies, it spits out a 1/1 seedling. Yet another card to pump your Dryad, and the same thing with the Wildwood Sower. Whenever you play a spell, this guy can pump out seedlings. Now, if you're going to go the Wildwood Sower route, you probably want to play some more spells. One particularly useful spell is Enrage. At all levels, Enrage is quite a good card for growing any card into a legitimate threat. And finally, a card that can be useful is Grave Pact. This will allow you to substitute for bot Animate, since you're going to have all these little seedlings and Fellwalkers out on the table anyway. You might as well be able to trade them for better creatures. Now there are 3 other cards that are not cheap that you might have that you could play in place. The main card that I know each of you has is the Gaunt Predator. You may only have one of this because it came with your Solforge, but this card is a pretty incredible creature for presenting that immediate threat, and especially if you enrage it or roar it or use the Pact Master on him, he becomes a legitimate threat really quickly, especially on rank 2. Another useful card is the Frostwild Tracker. On ranks 2 and 3, you're able to spit out even more of these level 1 creatures. You can play your Dryad followed by your Tracker and use the Tracker to put in an Ether Hound, and suddenly you have a Dryad that's grown 3 times already on the moment you have played her. The last card I would recommend is Rite of the Gaunt. This is just a useful way to make any of your characters legitimate threats, especially if you're playing the Phyto Bomb build. If you have Phyto Bomb, you litter the field with 1/1 creatures, you put Rite of the Gaunt on your Pact Master or on any other reasonably sized creature, and pow, as soon as it becomes their turn and they battle, that creature is going to grow an incredible amount. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Solforge Tips with Tiny Grimes, and I have provided links in the comments section below to sample games so you can see the Traffic Jam in action.